Analog music had been existing for ages, dating back to the birth of recorded music or live played music as far as we are concerned. Analog music can be classified in a variety of ways ranging from live musical performance to studio recording. The concept of analog music itself is derived from the sound of solo musical instruments that are harmonized together with different other musical instruments and voices that then the continuous harmony would be established into the music we know of. As years pass, we have witnessed analog music transitioning to digital. Basically, digital music is a copy of analog music and it is not a continuous recording. Rather, the sounds are captured using samples. The music is recorded in a bits of information, and as with sampling, more bits can be used for better quality. Let us see how analog has evolved into digital, and we see how both can coexist in the current times. This is the evolution of analog to digital in music. Musical anatomy was originally conceived between 60,000 and 300,000 years ago, according to researchers. Despite the fact that music had existed for hundreds of years, it wasn't until the Renaissance in the 1400s that the actual meaning of derived harmony and melody began to emerge. Throughout this historical period, string and wind instruments play a vital part in defining the harmony of classical music. The organ has been utilized for hundreds of years as an instrument. The organ was said to have been invented around 220 BC, and it was largely used and heard during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance periods. Although a new style of keyboard was made during the Renaissance in the 14th and 15th centuries, Bartolomeo Cristofori designed the contemporary piano we know today in the year 1700. The piano is a very noticeable analog instrument with such a recognizable and distinguishable sound when developed into a tune. Although the piano is most generally thought of as a solo instrument, musicians like Beethoven and Mozart popularized it among the bourgeoisie during the Renaissance. It may also be considered as a blending instrument in an orchestra, where a variety of instruments and sounds are mixed. The role of Renaissance-era construction of a new melodic distraction in conceptualizing the definition and shape of analog music in general is a crucial part of our history in the development of the musical genre and the trend that exists now. As we progress through the debate, we can see how analog music evolved with the arrival of analog technology in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
That's what everything was about.
By the late 19th century, the Industrial Revolution had occurred and a slew of new analog technology had been produced, including the steam engine, which had been an overstated symbol of new era technology at the time. Despite the fact that a new analog technology had only recently been introduced to the music industry, it had permanently altered the way people listen to music. Edward Leon Scott de Martinville recorded the first ever recorded voice in Paris in 1860, and music would soon be recorded and sold to listeners all over the world, launching the record industry. In 1901, the Victor Talking Machine Company revolutionized the music industry, and with the turn of the century came a new analog technology that re-immersed a far broader audience of listeners from all walks of life throughout the world. Music is no longer exclusive to the upper class, even the middle class can now listen to music in their own homes. The Victor Talking Machine, sometimes known as the phonograph, became increasingly popular throughout the 1920s and beyond. Beginning with the emergence of the jazz era in the Roaring Twenties, during this period music was for the masses, and because of the expanding number of jazz clubs that perform live music, almost everyone, including the middle and lower classes, could enjoy it. In the United States, live music, which was popular at the time with big bands and orchestras, became especially popular. The jazz era was also a glamorous period in which music became a continual source of enjoyment for the general public and a part of most people's daily life. Given the growth in the jazz swing era and the rise of the massive label corporations taking over the music industry, we may say that this period in our history is one of the most critical eras associated to the construction of the analog music industry in the 20th century. We see resentments in the popularity of record labels and how these businesses has affected the music industry, but also in the growing number of bands performing in a variety of fields, thereby accentuating the musical presence of analog instruments that have been used for millennia. The fundamental change in the size of records happened as record labels became more complex throughout time and technology evolved, as mobility became the focus, allowing smaller size records to become popular in the late 20th century, particularly the 1990s. These small records are of course CDs, which offer significantly superior sound quality while also allowing for the storage of more material in a smaller portable format. The VCR tape player gained to fame in the late 1980s and 1990s due to its size and sound quality compared to its more rudimentary predecessor, the record. We may argue that the VCR and the CD eras marked the transition from analog to digital. Music was presented in a new and different way in the late 1990s and early 2000s as the internet's popularity and relevance rose. Music in the form of an MP3 file can now be downloaded from the internet. This is the next step in music acquisition as well as the start of a new era in the early phases of digitization. People no longer need to buy CDs or CD player because they can now download music for free from the internet via MP3. However, this poses a significant difficulty for many individual artists who advocate for content originality. As a result, the new digital age of MP3 files created copyright concerns for artists and musicians, as audio files could be cloned, pirated, and then shared online without the permission of the record label that originally produced the song. Napster is one example of an internet platform that resulted in the violation of uncopyrighted music, resulting in piracy policies. Napster was an online music sharing network that allowed individuals to download shared music content for free, but as a result of copyright difficulties, the label firm producer was forced to pay a court settlement. In comparison to the previous analog period, digitalization in the early 21st century has drastically altered the way music is distributed. With the ability to upload infinite files to the internet, this created a dilemma for copyright infringement between label producers and recording artists and musicians in the early 2000s. Nowadays, listening to music means streaming music. The vast majority of streaming providers have an incredible selection of musics, albums, and playlists. Every user, no matter where they are or what device they are using, could theoretically listen to all of this music at the same time across the internet. Streaming works on a technical level by transmitting information from a server to a single participant. The raw file of the song can be found on the server. Because raw files are large and detailed, they must be compressed before being sent over the internet. When the stream reaches your device, it will use an app or plug-in to decode the compressed data. Some have claimed that music streaming is of inferior quality than CDs, vinyl albums, or even digital downloads. This is largely correct. The default streaming quality on Spotify is 160 kilobytes per second. A typical MP3 file has a bitrate of 320 kilobytes per second. CDs typically have a bitrate of 1411 kilobytes per second. However, it's gotten so popular that the entire industry has had to reorganize around it. Streaming figures has surpassed $1 trillion for the first time in history in 2019, and in March it was estimated that streaming accounted for 18% of all revenue from recorded music. A lot of people have been predicting the evolution of digital music in the future. Some predicted the audio would be more similar to ambient music. Some said that 3D sound audio might be the new trend in the coming years. Here's a short video of what has been predicted for the future of music.
But if you really want to get crazy, let's talk about cutting edge. Take Jamie Oliver's silent drum. Now this is not a tight drumhead that you bash with sticks. Instead, it's a flexible membrane that you manipulate and change the rhythm and pitch of music that's playing. Or the Rolly C-board, which is a piano with special rubber keys that allows the piano player to bend notes, just as a guitarist would bend a guitar string. But some music makers are taking this digital mandate to a whole new level. Take Brian House, for example, with his quotidian record. Now, he has managed to generate music using location tracking data. Literally, the artist's movements are turned into song. A weird hypnotic song, as it turns out. You could do this with any kind of data. It could be your home's energy consumption. It could be what's trending on Twitter. The cool thing about this is this experience transcends music. It actually starts to describe our own human behavior. But that's not the only way that music can transcend just a pure entertainment experience. Think medicine. There's evidence to show that music can help stroke victims recover verbal memory, focus, speech, even the ability to walk. The more we learn about the neurophysiology of music, the brighter the future looks. And we've got a question for you.
As technology advances, music fans continue to cherish simpler times and the vintage nature of gadgets utilized in previous decades. Vinyl album sales in the United States have increased for the 14th year in a row, according to Statista. With approximately 19 million LPs sold in 2019, sales increased by 14% over 2018. A once nearly extinct technology has created an impact once more over the past decade and a half, as music lovers are testing different ways to appreciate music. Regardless of the avenue of which they listen to music, fans want to connect with artists and know they have options for how they are able to enjoy it. I am Farhan Aiman. Thank you for tuning in.